Let's go! Top 5 LSU targets in the class of 2021. Oh yeah, you know you want Kool-Aid, baby. Let's go. Wait, there's really a prospect named Kool-Aid? Yes, and I want him in this class. So yes, as always, the comment section's going to be live. Give me a go Tigers. Let me know where you're watching from. And we just had our first live stream right here. So at the end of today's video, I have a special announcement about live streaming. Here are a few names that are just outside of this list. Bryce Langston, a heavy Florida lean, but LSU is one of his 2 finalists. Michael Trigg, a playmaking tight end. A lot of people think he's going to go to LSU, especially after Thomas Fedone goes to Nebraska. Savion Byrd, an offensive tackle that a lot of you are familiar with, a heavy SMU lean. And then we have Andrew Makuba, a safety outside of the top 200, but a player that has been in constant contact with LSU. So those are just a few names, but obviously kids decommit, kids flip. I think this recruiting season's going to be wild with decommitments because of the lack of official visits, because of a long recruiting dead period with everything going on in this country. So let's start off with number 5. That is JaQuincy Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Pinson, Alabama. A 5-star corner, a super multi-sport athlete. Yes, LSU has Nathaniel Wiggins already committed in this class. Yes, LSU had Ricks and McLaughlin. Cordell Flott is still a young player. But if you can add a 5-star corner, you add a 5-star corner. LSU, yeah, Kamari Rogers coming in the class of 2022, but Kool-Aid has elite ball skills, elite athleticism, and if you're going to play at DBU, you got to have some swag. If your nickname is Kool-Aid, you've got swag. And we all know the best flavor of Kool-Aid, red. So, it's not cherry, it's not any of that. It's red. If you know, you know. But still, I love what he can do at corner, and I think he's going to be a fantastic player no matter where he goes. And remember, if he doesn't go to LSU, he's more than likely going to go to an SEC rival like Alabama or Auburn. So, if you pick him up, you also take a player away from one of your rivals. Coming in at number 4, a lot of you feel very frustrated about Brian Thomas Jr., the lanky wide receiver out of Walker, Louisiana. I've gotten so many texts. Why hasn't he committed yet? Well, he's a quiet guy. He keeps his recruitment very close to the vest. A lot of people feel comfortable with LSU picking up Thomas Jr. simply because of his relationship with fellow 4-star receiver Chris Hilton out of Zachary, who's committed to LSU. And a lot of people think that's going to be a package deal. They think Brian Thomas Jr. will eventually commit to LSU. Walker is literally a stone throws away from Baton Rouge. So, you're really hoping that this commitment hurries up and comes. But Alabama is very much in the mix. And, with quieter kids, it's kind of hard to read the tea leaves. Why is Brian Thomas Jr. such a huge prospect? LSU does have 3 wide receivers committed to this class: Hilton, JoJo Earl, and Deion Smith. Well, he's a big deal because, he's big. JoJo Earl is 5'9", Deion Smith is under 6'2", and Chris Hilton is also under 6 foot. Brian Thomas Jr. is your Terrace Marshall out of this group, a large target that can legit rise over defensive backs. Prospect number 3 here is pretty easy. Tristan Lee. A lot of you have been familiar with his recruitment. Is he going to go to Clemson? Is he going to go to Oklahoma? Is he going to go to Alabama? Well, Ed Orgeron's been crushing it lately with this kid. LSU, only 1 offensive tackle committed in this class so far. That is Garrett Dellinger. The year before, they only had Marcus Dummerville. There needs to be more offensive linemen coming to LSU. Absolutely. Tristan Lee is a rare offensive tackle with weirdly, a soccer background. Now, normally when you hear offensive tackle, you don't associate that with, offensive tackle, but this is where we are. He's very fleet-footed. He's very strong at the point of attack. He could be an immediate contributor from year one. Heck, you might play him at guard and then eventually move him out at tackle. Who's to say he can't play all 5 of the positions? He's a smart kid, and this kid is simply an amazing athlete. Now, I keep reading that offensive linemen are make-or-break commitments for LSU because the depth hasn't necessarily been there in recruiting. Well, pump the brakes just a little bit. You do already have Dellinger. You do have the capability of flipping offensive linemen and defensive linemen. We've seen Ed Orgeron do that. We've, in fact, dedicated a few episodes to this very topic. Ed Orgeron can find some defensive linemen that can also play offensive line. That's what they're doing with Dare Rosenthal. So it's not a total panic move to get as many offensive linemen as possible. And also, looking ahead to 2022, LSU has a really good in-state tackle in Will Campbell out of Neville High School in Monroe. Shout out to you, King Ulysses from Monroe, North Louisiana. Stand up, let's go. LSU's doing just fine, but to get an elite top 15 5-star offensive tackle like Tristan Lee, this is how offensive tackles need to be from this point forward. Fleet of foot, athletic background, tons of speed. Tristan Lee has all that, and that would be a huge pickup for LSU. Coming in at number 2 is Sage Splash Ryan out of Lafayette, a 5-star safety. I love him. There's no other way around it. I love this kid. Now, as far as his recruitment is concerned, he's still very open to Alabama. He's still very open to Clemson. And who wouldn't be? I mean, those are 2 of the top programs that have put elite defensive backs into the NFL. But let's be honest, LSU's DBU for a reason. Everybody's predicting Flash to go to LSU. Once again, not that far from campus in Lafayette, an hour away, the 337. Let's go. Also, family connections to LSU, as he is definitely related to Kev Falk, who, of course, is the LSU legend and the running backs coach. I would love Sage Ryan to come to this class. Now, elite speed, sub 4.5, hard-hitting safety. I also like him better than any other defensive back in this class. I like him way better than McKinstry, who I think is really good. I think Sage Ryan is a future first-round draft pick simply because of position versatility. The same way I view Dante Jackson is the same way that I view Sage Ryan. So, yeah, I really, really want Sage Ryan. I actually would have him number 1 if it wasn't for one stipulation about player number 1, and we're going to dive into that right now. So a lot of you saw this coming from a mile away. Who's the number 1 player that LSU needs in this class? And he is an in-state prospect. He is one of the best players at his position. And of course, I'm talking about Peyton Todd. By the way, Peyton Todd, one heck of an athlete. He's even played some linebacker at West Monroe, one of the best programs in the country. So yeah, the number 1 player is Maason Smith, and you can't miss him. Terrebonne High School, huge, dominating defensive lineman. Actually, individually, I have Sage Ryan over Maason Smith simply because a versatile defensive back that can play all the positions, to me, is a more immediate help than a defensive tackle. And this is coming from a former defensive tackle. That's just how the LSU defense is going to operate from this point forward. Wide receivers are getting better. Finding guys to cover those talented wide receivers are few and far between. But Maason Smith is a huge domino for LSU simply because if you get Maason Smith, you can also get Korey Foreman. Now, for you die-hard recruiters, you know all about that dynamic. They both said for months, if not years now, that they want to play together. Korey Foreman, the nation's #1 prospect, the nation's #1 defensive end out of California. Not only are you getting an immediate impact player in Maason Smith, you could be getting an elite, and I mean elite defensive end. So that obviously puts Maason Smith easily at #1 if you can get the package deal of the century. LSU, no real panic at defensive tackle right now. Jaquelin Roy's going to be a good player. Jacobian Guillory out of Alexandria will be a very good player. Eric Taylor out of Alabama. Those are 3 4-star defensive tackles from last year's class that look to be future starters at LSU. And then in the class of 2021, LSU already has a commitment from Anthony Hundley. And then in 2022, Sean Washington out of New Orleans is already committed. And in the class of 2022, LSU is in the running for Shamar Stewart, the nation's #1 defensive end, and Walter Nolan, the nation's #1 defensive tackle. But this is another thing, because if Maason Smith doesn't commit to LSU, he's more than likely going to go somewhere in the SEC. More than likely that'll be in the SEC West, or Georgia, who you would probably face in the SEC championship game. So, if you lose Maason Smith, he's going to a rival school that could be a nightmare for 3 to 4 years. So, obviously, that makes Maason Smith even more valuable than, let's say, a Tristan Lee. If Tristan Lee doesn't go to LSU, he's more than likely going to go to Oklahoma or Clemson, schools that you don't have to play every year. And that does play a factor. It's simple logic. If you don't have that player come to your school, you'd much rather that player go somewhere out of conference. A good example of this, 5-star receiver Rakeem Jarrett, who decided at the last second to go to Maryland. And everybody freaked out. Well, we're losing Rakeem Jarrett. When Kayshon Boutte out of Louisiana is a starter right now for LSU, was a better prospect to begin with. He was faster. And Rakeem Jarrett went to Maryland. You're never going to have to play Maryland, especially in the college football playoff. So that does play a role in recruiting. If you lose a player, you don't want that player to go to a rival. Maason Smith, more than likely, would go to a rival. Now, I've gotten a lot of texts about, well, what about individually? What makes Maason Smith so great? First thing, obviously, size. 6'5", 330. That's good enough size, obviously, to play in the SEC. It's about as big as you'll see a defensive tackle. Ika for LSU, the starter right now at nose tackle, obviously has great size. So size does play a huge role up the middle. My favorite thing about him as a player is that even though he's a big guy and huge defensive tackles tend to have very sloppy pass rushing mechanics, well, Maason Smith wants to be a great pass rusher. I watch him in these one-on-one drills. I watch him on film. He's working on his swim moves. He's working on his rips, his push-pulls, his interior move. Sometimes you'll see a spin. He has the motor and the desire to be an elite pass rusher. And he does have great explosiveness. Because he's so big, his pad level can get a little too high, but Ed Orgeron's the best developer of talent at the defensive line position. Also, Christian Lacouture and Bill Johnson are really good coaches, so LSU would coach him up pretty quickly to be a more lower pad level player. You can never have enough defensive line depth. When you factor in all those things, Maason Smith, with the potential to get Korey Foreman as well in this class, is the clear-cut #1 player left for LSU to go get. Let's go! One more thing about Maason Smith. I love people that have different first names. The double A in Maason Smith has been screwing with so many people, but he's so good that people start to actually get his name spelled right. It's kind of like Tagovailoa. How do you spell Tagovailoa? T-A-G... No, I still can't spell Tagovailoa. But if you're that good, people will start to learn how to say and spell your name correctly. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. Great, great, great fun episode. Give me your top target in the comments section below. Is it Maason Smith? Give me an M. Is it Sage Ryan? Give me an S. Kool-Aid. Is it Kool-Aid? I mean, heck, cover corners are few and far between. So let me know in the comments section below. Now, let's talk about live streaming. We had our first one on Wednesday. We had heated debate about the live stream. That was great. So, some of you have requested us to not do the live streams on Wednesday anymore because the Coach O show is on Wednesday nights. Because of that, our next live stream, let me make sure I get the date right, because I don't want to compete against Coach O. Live stream next Tuesday, September 22nd at 7 p.m., all right? And I want all of you to come with a lot of energy, come with your questions. We'll do a live stream about the current team during the first portion, and then we'll get to your recruiting questions at the latter portion. You know, I look at YouTube sends you analytics. My last episode with Joe Burrow and his first TD did not do well. I mean, it stunk when it came to views. I was kind of shocked by that. I hope some of you guys show a little more love to that video. Anyway, I want to shout out Korey Foreman. I love that last name. Is it Grimion or Grimillion? Grimion, right? I had a friend with that last name. It's Grimion. Grimion. In the Cincy game, Joe changed the play to a QB draw. For those that don't know. Interesting. It wouldn't shock me. Basically, the point of that film study was to compare that QB draw to the film study we did about the QB draw against Clemson. It was the same exact defensive formation. I got chills when I saw that Joe Burrow touchdown. So, big shout out to you, Korey. And then also, Sports Talk Nolan. I love your videos, bro. You have good energy. I appreciate that. I actually had a commenter recently say that he doesn't like the energy, that I have to tone it down. Really? This is LSU football. Guys, this is our escape. This is what we live for. This is what we care about the most. Why would we tone it down? I mean, come on. Let's go. I want you to go up to someone and say, let's go. And they would think you're probably about to fight them, but, you know, bring that energy. Let's go. And we are at over 450 subscribers. I cannot say this enough. We've got to get to 1,000. We've got to get to 1,000 before the first game against Mississippi State. Let's do it. Let's go. We could do it. All right? It's Power Hour LSU. Boom. 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 What are we eating tonight? Stir fry. Let's get a stir fry in. Y'all do stir fry? It's like I'm a stir fry guy.